Howdy from windy Wyoming. Glad to have you here with me. This week we're going to talk about making our time work out. So we've been talking about the schedule and different parts of the schedule, and this is the tricky part. So let's look up Genesis 18:14, just a passage talking about time. In Genesis 18:14, it says, "Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son." So I know it's not specifically about this lesson this morning, but talking about the idea of time. So each week you have a specific amount of time to teach your lesson. It can vary too, depending on other things going on. So oftentimes, like in children's church, we have an adult services running at the same time. You have a different preacher, a guest preacher, missionary, or different subjects. Sometimes might go shorter or longer. And so it's important that our class is reflective of the time of the adult service. And so a couple things to talk about when we talk about making sure our time works out. Well, the first thing is to identify important parts of the class. Those things that need to be in every single class. For me, that's the lesson, the salvation illustration, and a time of invitation. That's like the non-negotiables. And then there's other things from there that are a little bit more flexible. And so I want to make sure I get those into every class. Sometimes we know that maybe a lesson's going to be a little bit shorter, and we try to start with those things and then work to the other things later. And so other things that were important to class is prayer time and Bible memorization, and then you have the singing and games, and all of it's really ultimately important, but there are some things that I believe are more important. And so if you have a limited amount of time, you want to focus on those things. And so as we plan our lessons, we want to make sure that there is some flexibility within our lessons. One of the ways that I have helped to do that is I have my lesson broken down into time frames. You can actually see, I'll show you an example here. And so you'll notice that with the memory verse, that's 11:20. 11:26, we're going to start the lesson illustration. 11:29, we're going to have prayer. 11:35, we're going to have a track tip and give out tracks and record their tracks. At 11:34, we're going to sing a song. At 11:36, we're going to start the lesson. And so what that does is help me as I'm going through class. Depending on what part we're at, I know if I'm ahead or behind. And so that's scheduled for a typical Sunday morning. And so if it's a typical Sunday morning, I can tell where I'm at based on those time stamps. The other thing that I do to help with this is the Bible review game is usually one of the last things we do. It's after the lesson. We've already done all the teaching and training for the day. And the Bible review game can be shortened. Sometimes it can be totally cut out. Or it can be longer. If you are ahead of schedule and you need a little bit more time, you can ask more questions and make the game last a little bit longer. And so there's some ways to stretch it. And so there's things like songs. You can, if you're short on time, you can add some additional songs to the lesson. You can add some kind of testimony or a time of praises. There's some things that we can add in to make the class longer and shorter. Then we have to start cutting things. We have to figure out what's important and start cutting those. But it's best if you know all that before class begins, so you understand what can be cut or what can be added to lengthen or shorten your class to make it fit within the time frame needed. In our particular setup, we typically hear the piano start playing for the invitation, and we know we're down to about 2.5, 3 minutes. And so then we're able to plan our class accordingly. And so kind of helpful in our situation at this point. And so then the children are giving you their time. I wanted to point this out. And we want to use their time wisely. We wanted to help them in their walk with the Lord. So as we're planning class, it's not just about keeping the children busy, but we want things that are profitable to them, things that help them to grow closer to the Lord and have a meaningful walk with the Lord. And so as we put together these lessons and these class times, I want to be mindful of my children's time and make sure that what I'm doing is a benefit and a blessing to their lives. And then at the same time, I've got to make it fit into a time scale that is comparable to the rest of church, and they need to have fun, because quite honestly, if the children aren't having fun, they're not going to want to come back. And so all those elements have to be mixed together and squeezed within the time frame that you have. And so I like lots of things, and I like to break it up and move from station to station, or at least from thing to thing. So we'll go from a song to a memory verse to like track tips is something that we do. And how do you hand out tracks? Where's a good place to hand out tracks? And then, maybe another song, and then a lesson, and then, prayer time, and kind of back and forth. And you can break up class and vary your time quite a bit based on your tools. Now, if you say, now I've got a really long class period, let's say you got the kids for an hour and a half, then you're going to have to be a little bit more creative on things that you add into your lesson, because the children aren't going to sit for 30 minutes straight and listen to your lesson, or even 45 minutes. And so you got to be creative on how to use that time, but to make it beneficial to your students so that it's used in a manner that's fun, educational, and they're happy and excited about coming back the next week. So, and I just, one more note on this. I know it helps, especially like in our setting, and every setting is a little bit different, but parents get done with the main church and they want to come get their children. And so it's super beneficial if we can end comparably the same in children's church as they do in the main service. And so whether it's lengthening the class a little bit, shortening the class a little bit, but we want to try to make sure that when the parents are ready to come get their children, that we're pretty much wrapping it up, and that we're paying attention to the time, and just showing them that we respect their time and use it as wisely as we can. So with that, we'll go ahead and be done for today. If you have ideas on other things that can be done within class, would love to hear some of those. We talked about a few today: memory verse, lesson illustrations, prayer, track tips, songs, the actual lesson, salvation illustration, invitation, Bible review games, behavior awards. We do a time of introduction, and even sometimes start with a song. And so those are kind of some of the things I do. But if you have other things that you have that you'd love to suggest, you can leave those in the comments. So thanks for listening, and Lord willing, we'll see you next time.